In this video, I'm going to walk you through a number of coaching questions that you can ask your clients to help them get better results. Also, I want you to think of this from your perspective as if you were looking for help and I was coaching you. I'm going to show you the 3C framework we use and a number of questions that you can basically steal and adopt for your coaching business. Uriel King here, CEO and founder of Healthpreneur. We help health practitioners build scalable practices that make more money, help more people, and obviously buy back a lot of their time. Now, today, if you want this, the sheets for this process I'm going to walk you through, we have a really cool framework called the 3C method. There's probably a link in the description. We'll hook you up with the one-pager. And I want to give you a bit of context for where you would use this. So if you're running a coaching program, whether it's one-on-one or group, a lot of people waste time in one-on-ones where it's like storytelling time, right? So you have an hour with a client, they talk 45 minutes about their story. You're like, I don't give a shit. Let's just move forward, okay? But at the same time, you want to be empathetic about what they're going through. Okay, so the 3C framework is very, very simple. It's a 20-minute conversation. So if you're doing one-on-ones, you can certainly keep doing that, but you do not need an hour with clients. I promise you this. I've been coaching clients for 20 plus years. 1 hour one-on-one sessions do nothing other than suck the life out of you. So let's be a little bit more effective with how we coach clients. So there's 3 C's. Number 1 is confidence. It's looking back. What are the wins? What are we celebrating? 2 is clarity, which is like, what are we focused on right now? What are the challenge or challenges that we need a bit of support on? And the 3rd C is commitment. So after we get off this call, what are we committed to making happen as a result of this conversation? So I'm gonna give you a few questions in each of these 3 areas that you can use for yourself, even as you're reflecting on your own work, but also with your clients. So let's start off with confidence. Confidence is very, very important. Because what happens a lot of times is a client will show up on a call, or it could be a group call. And if you think about it, normally a lot of people are just like, I have a problem. Here's what I need help with. So they're coming into a conversation with a problem, which is not the right mindset to have a positive experience. So the first thing that we want to do is like, hey, I'll just use Joanne as the name of the prospect here. So let's say it's a one-on-one conversation. Hey, Joanne, great to chat. Listen, let's jump in and walk me through a couple wins. Like, what are we celebrating right now? What's been good for you over the past week or two? And you can just jot this stuff down, or they can just talk it through. And all we're doing here is we're shifting the focus in the mind of the prospect to focus on the positive. So most people focus on what's not working, myself included. We have to train ourselves to focus on what is working, because no matter what's going on, there's always wins and positives to capture. So that's how I would start the call, right? Is like, what are the wins? What are the things that we're celebrating? Amazing, right? So that's what we're going to start with. Okay. So now we get into the actual conversation itself outside of like celebrating and documenting some of those wins. I'm going to give you a couple questions that will help you move from confidence into the clarity piece. So the clarity piece is now, okay, like, well, sounds like everything's great. Awesome job on doing this. So over the next 20 minutes or so, what's the one thing that you need the most support with? So that's what this is going to do now, is going to boil down the conversation into one thing, not I have a million things to talk with you about. And this is also very important from a leadership perspective. If a client comes into a call with you and they're like, listen, I've got all these different things I want to hit on. Like, I love that. I love the fact that you're so prepared. Let's focus on the one thing that's going to make all of the others less relevant. And so this is your job as a coach and a leader to focus on the singular most important constraint that makes everything else irrelevant. Because you don't have the fact that someone thinks that they have 10 things to work on exemplifies the fact that they don't know what to work on. When you have 10 priorities, you have none, right? So our goal as a coach is not to hold people accountable necessarily. It's to give them clarity, because from clarity comes momentum. From momentum comes results. Okay. So a person's going to say, I need help with X. Okay, cool. Fair enough. Now, there might be some stuff that you have to unpack there, but I'm going to give you a couple kind of questions to shoot off that. I'm just kind of looking at my notes here on my phone. So one is, depending on if you find someone is telling you a bit of a story, right? Like, oh, like, this is going on, and like, I've noticed this. Like, it just feels like they're telling you a bit of a story. Number one, we want to acknowledge, right? So the simple framework is acknowledge and ask. Acknowledge what they're saying and then ask the next question. So Joanne, listen, I completely understand your frustration, where you're coming from. That's got to be challenging. is it okay if I'm completely just, as you know, can I be completely direct and honest with you in this conversation, right? So that's something you can ask up front to get their permission to be like very direct, because some people are not coachable and they'll tell you to fuck off. So don't work with those people. So I might say, if someone's giving me a little bit of a story, I might say, hey, Joanna, like, what's the payoff you're getting from staying stuck here or stuck in this story? And they might say to themselves, I don't even know. And then you can unravel it. Be like, well, is this like, the last time we spoke a month ago, like there was a similar situation happening. So I'm just curious, like, how are you benefiting? There's always a secondary gain, okay? There's like, what's the payoff you're getting from staying stuck in this situation? And they might say, well, there's no payoff, right? Okay, cool. Totally fair. Understand that. And from there, we can move into a little bit of a deeper clarifying question. So we're still in the clarity section. So it's to say, okay, well, what's the actual problem here? I'll just, give you a sense from a business perspective. So I was having dinner the other night with some clients and they're like, so our objective over the next year is to hit $1 million in revenue in the business. I'm like, amazing. Okay. So they're like, well, knowing what you know about our business, like, what do you think is the best path forward? So I said, well, number one is we have to identify what the constraint is that's currently preventing you from hitting $1 million already. So in their business model, which is largely ads to a call or to a webinar, to a call, to an enrollment, it's like you simply need more calls, right? But okay, well, you're getting no-shows and unqualified people, et cetera. Cool. So what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve here? What's the core constraint that you might not be thinking about that's preventing you from getting to the next level? Because you could say, well, we just need more calls booked, which is fair. But then if you're the only one doing all the calls and you have a bunch of unqualified people on the phone or on Zoom, now you're spending 4, 5, 6 hours a day with unqualified people. That exhausts you, becomes very frustrating as well. And it's like, what am I doing this for? So call volume may not be the issue. Maybe it's call quality. Like, could you deal with half as number of calls, but the actual people showing up are legit qualified prospects? And it's like, hell yes, that'd be way better. You're not running a huge sales team, right? It's just you doing the calls. Okay, cool. So if we want to get less calls, but the right type of calls, what do we have to do to make that a reality? So now we're clarifying what's really going on that's preventing you from hitting that next level. So hopefully that makes sense as an example. Another way you can look at this, so we're getting into this situation, and this depends on how knowledgeable this client is or like the type of client you're working with, but sometimes you can ask them what they would do. So for instance, if this were happening to one of your clients, what advice would you give them? Now, if I'm coaching health practitioners on how to grow their business and they're helping people with Hashimoto's, the context is different, right? But if they're stuck in let's say a surface level, type of scenario where it's not specific to business and maybe it's just their mindset or like there's stuff getting in the way, I'm like, well, what advice would you give your clients if they were in this situation? And what that does is it removes them from the recipient to more of the advisor, and they start to look at the situation from a different perspective. So again, the question is, if this were happening to one of your clients, what advice would you give them? It gives them a different perspective by which to look at the situation. Okay. Another way to handle this situation, so we're in clarity still. What would this look like if it were simpler? What would this look like if it were simpler? This is an interesting question. Again, we're not necessarily just giving somebody advice here. We're helping them come to their own conclusions. A lot of people overcomplicate things. And so whether it's with their health or their business, how can we make, what would this look like if it were simpler? And again, just get them to think about well, it would look like this and that. Okay, cool. Is it possible that there are people or businesses out there that are doing things in a way that are just so much simpler? Is it possible? Probably. What do you think that could look like? You may not know everything, but what do you think, in a perfect world, that could look like? And then it's so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to shift their belief around what's possible. So by asking, do you think it's possible that there are others out there that are doing this in a way that's simpler? Okay, cool. That opens up possibility. All right, cool. What could that look like? And then it's well, is there any reason that that couldn't be the truth for you? So a lot of these questions around shifting beliefs, it's hard to change someone's behavior, but we can shift the lens through which they're looking at a situation so they can then change their own behavior. Again, still in the clarity section, right? So we're dealing with the problem, the core issue. So one way of doing this is just telling them what to do. right? But that also creates a certain level of dependency, which we want to somehow get away from and provide them with more empowerment, right? So question is, what would have to be true for this to be a non-issue? What would have to be true for this to be a non-issue? And again, the client's going to take a moment to think about this. Okay, cool. Like this would have to be true. This would have to be in place. Okay. And again, it shifts from problem-focused to solution-focused. We want to help people become better problem solvers, not just problem spotters. This is something like in our company, even with our team, one of our core principles is be a problem solver, not just a problem spotter. Somebody who just spots problems is to a certain extent valuable, but the A players spot the problem and then they're like, hey, I've brought a solution to the table. What do you think about this? Amazing. That's infinitely more valuable. And what's the same thing that we want to do with our clients is how can we help them start to identify what the possible solution is, not just complain about the problem. I'll give you one more question in the clarity section. So again, we're still unraveling this problem. What are you tolerating that you know you shouldn't be? What are you tolerating that you know you shouldn't be? So let's go back to the example in the business context of call volumes down. You want to hit $1 million in business? You got to get more calls. You have to get more people like inquiring to work with you. What are you tolerating that you shouldn't be for that to be true? Well, every single day that goes by and I'm not seeing enough calls on my calendar or the right calls on my calendar, I'm simply allowing that to be the status quo. I'm simply allowing that to be okay. Okay, cool. So part of this is like, could you get a little bit angry about this? And I use angry very loosely. How can we turn that energy of just apathy into one of anger? And I use anger again in a very energetic fashion to move forward. Okay, yeah, like, no, like, I'm not, like, this is not okay. Why do I keep tolerating this? I don't know. Like, basically, are you saying you're okay at this level? You say you want to hit 1 million, but you're okay at 250? No, like, cool. Like, what is unlocking that allow you to do? Let's connect back to the why. Well, this will allow me to this. Amazing, cool. So how do we get away from tolerating the status quo here? What needs to be true in order for you to move beyond this cruising altitude in terms of your action, belief, energy to move to the next level so that you don't tolerate a couple calls a day where you're like, screw this shit. I'm going to get 5 or 6 calls quality. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create more ads. I'm going to put more ad spend behind my ads. I'm going to be more consistent in my communication on social, whatever it might be, right? It's raising the standard because right now we get what we're willing to tolerate. That's the thing, guys. In life, we get exactly what we're willing to tolerate, nothing more, nothing less. And this is very hard for some of us to accept is when you look at your results, you have exactly what you've allowed yourself to tolerate because you're okay with it. For someone who's making $50,000 a year, that's their set point. That's what they're willing to tolerate. For someone who's making $50,000 a day and they're so pissed off about that, that's a different level of standard. So think about how do we raise our standards to not tolerate things that we're just allowing to be okay with. So this is where part of the work, comes in. Okay, so we've asked some questions. We're clear on what the problem is. Now, either you as the coach or the provider can provide some very direct advice here to say, well, based on our conversation, it sounds like this is the path forward, or I love everything you've suggested and I want to consider that. And also, I think this is important to consider too. So this is where you're going to give a little bit more direction or kind of recap of what they've said, if it makes sense for the next step. And then that becomes the focus moving forward. So that brings us to the final C, which is commitment. So the number one question we're going to ask in this commitment phase is, okay, cool. So from now until the next time we speak, what's the one thing you're going to do? What's the one action step you're going to commit to start moving this forward today or after we get off this call? So this is very important because if you just have a conversation or we've celebrated some wins and identified an issue, we gotta put a bow around this all. We have to put a bow and tie it up and move it forward. And I'll give you an example of why this is how powerful this can be. So a couple weeks ago, I had a client in our mastery program, great guy, and he said he came to me with his numbers, his critical numbers, which we track for all of our clients, and we're looking at his data and I'm like, so what do you think is the issue here? He's like, well, I'm paying a lot for a call. I'm like, yes, you are. So I said, well, what's the game plan? Like, what are we doing to correct this? So he's like, well, yeah, like we're revamping some of our stuff and some messaging. I've got some stuff in place. I'm like, I love that. So then we moved, so we got out of the clarity piece and we're moving into the commitment phase. All right, so I said, well, when is this gonna be done by? Right, when we get off this call, when is all of this stuff gonna be put in action? He said, well, it's gonna be about 4 weeks. I was like, hey, I got, cool. And I just asked the question, I said, is there any possible way this could get done by tomorrow? Is there any way you could take the 4 weeks and get it done by tomorrow? And initially he's like, well, I think that'd be a lot, but I could do next week. I'm like, cool. So my intention was not to get him to do it tomorrow. My intention was to really challenge his deadline, which I'm like, on knowing what he was working on, I'm like, it doesn't take a month. So I said, could you get it done by tomorrow? He said, well, that would probably be a stretch, but I could do it next week. So right away, we compressed the deadline by 75%. So he gets the stuff done. We set a deadline for when this stuff is going to be executed on. A week later, he posts in our group and he's celebrating the fact that he got way more calls booked at a lower cost per call and he was getting way better momentum. And I'm like, that's amazing, because now what he was effectively doing was saving money by no longer wasting money on expensive cost per call booked, just because he took faster action. So if he had allowed this to drag on for a month, he would have paid, 75% more for all of his marketing, which would have been a massive waste of money. So the commitment phase is really important because it starts to put into place what this person is going to commit to as soon as we get off the call. So number one is a deadline. Second thing is, okay, what are you doing to move this forward starting today after we get off this call? Tony Robbins famously says, never leave the sight of setting a goal without doing something towards its attainment. Strike while the iron is hot, right? It's all the same stuff. Okay, another great question that kind of ties back into the tolerating or standards is the following. So if the client's not 100% clear yet on what the next step is, you ask, what would the future you, what would the version of you that's making $1 million, that version of you, what would they do next? Or what is the healthy fit version of you? What does that person do next after we get off this call? That's a really cool question because it frames them, it puts them in the position of, I'm already there, which is the ultimate first step to achieving anything is be, do, have, right? So we start with being at the end. Like you're already that person. What does that version of you do right now when we get off this call? And just do that. Because if you are that person now, then the actions you will take will get you to what you want to have. At the end of the day, better questions create better clients because you're empowering clients to become better problem solvers and they become less dependent on you. There's less, I'll call it teat sucking, if we use farm animals as an example. And yes, you want to have clients who see value in working with you, but you don't want clients who can only move forward by having a conversation with you. This is part of the problem with one-on-one coaching, is a lot of times it's doctor dependent. And I use doctor loosely, coach, therapist, whatever. The client only gets better when they see you. You only get paid when you see them. It's an unscalable, unsustainable, absolutely broken, flawed model that serves no one. And I'm very adamant about this. By contrast, you can still incorporate one-on-one, but it doesn't need to be an hour. 20 minutes, confidence, clarity, commitment. If you use that framework, your clients will move faster, they will move forward, and they will be empowered to become better versions of themselves where they can actually make forward progress in an empowered fashion as opposed to always having to rely on you. And this doesn't mean that they're gonna leave you because they don't see value. No, they're gonna actually stay longer because they get more value from you because you're helping them become the version of themselves they've always wanted to become. So if you found this helpful, again, you can download the 3C worksheet. It's a one-pager. Just use it as a framework for your one-on-one calls. It's simple, it's awesome. And if you've enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button. Got lots of others to help you build a scalable health practice. And then finally, if you want to see how we help thousands of our clients grow 6- and 7-figure coaching businesses, you can check out our $1 million model video, which is somewhere around here. Thanks for hanging out today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.